Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Soul and the Body Show. I am your host, CURT Williams Jr., metaphysician, hermeticist, and spiritualist, and we are getting ready for another great episode. Now, let's recap. We've gone through God's creation, and then how he created space, and then the ethereal realm, and then the angels. After the angels, he united with Mother Nature. They became one. Their union created the Big Bang. Now you have galaxies and universes. Now, we're at the point where we're past the dinosaurs and all that, and we're just about to introduce everyone to the Elohims of the book of Genesis. We know who they are and where they came from. This episode will be very special because it will be the actual landing of the Elohims of the book of Genesis. Welcome.
If you should awaken, I will be there when you wake from your lovely
Welcome back. This is where the book gets very serious. We're talking about the family of Anu. The family of Anu, which actually are the biblical Jehovah and Yahweh, and their brothers. Another brother, Anki, who's very important to the process. He's the one that created mankind in their image. Now, the arrival, it is such a pivotal point in the maceration of the planets and the galaxies of the Milky Way. This particular planet, originally called Tiamat, named by the Anunnaki, Earth, after one of their chief deities, Enlill. It is called a planet within the Goldilocks zone, which means the distance between the sun and outer space and gravity enables the planet to be very unique in its atmospheric components, with the abilities to house all kinds of different species of life, from the micro to the macro, from a simple one-cell organism to a complicated million-cell, billion-cell organisms. This is the particular Goldilocks zone. Every universe has them. Every galaxy has them. Now, the arrival. What we have to understand and accept is that the creator of the fabric of the universe is not the same thing as the creators of mankind. The creators of mankind were scientists. They were DNA specialists. They could create cows and goats and grains and things to eat. The most important thing about these beings is that they were humanoid. When you look at the Bible, and And you have to understand that the creator of the fabric of the universe is an inconceivable concept. Yet we as human beings have managed to put human traits upon what they believe is the creator of the fabric. For instance, jealousy, envy, punishment. All these things are beneath consideration to a ubiquitous being. This is the word that you must understand. This is the word you need to grasp onto. Once you understand what the word ubiquitous means, then you would understand that the creator of the universe is incapable of the behavior of the biblical gods. Ubiquitous means everywhere. Omnipresent means all the time. Which basically is saying that if this particular God, in fact, will punish people, he is actually punishing himself. He is within this fabric. The fact that he knows past, present, and future means that he knew what was going to happen to a species before that species was created. It's like calling the creator of the universe a masochist, which is insanity. And the only thing that will make sense is if you're able to separate the two. If you're able to separate the creator of the universe and the biblical gods. The biblical gods were human. They were emotional. They would get upset. They made slaves out of people and taught people how to make slaves out of people. We have the concept of slavery from them. They felt that because they created us and had the ability to control the amount of time, our lifespans, that they could call themselves our maker. Now, there's a reasonable amount of truth to that from a physical standpoint. It's like saying that T. Henry Ford built a car, but the actual components of that car are molecules. He didn't create the molecules. He was able to put those molecules together and weld and mold them together until they created a vehicle and mechanics. But everything within the fabric of those mechanics were created by something that was far more than Henry Ford could possibly do. What the components of a human being consist of is far greater than what any of the Elohims were capable of doing. They were capable of mocking the creation of mankind by studying DNA. And they couldn't create the DNA. They had to take the DNA from existing DNA and manipulate it. Once it was manipulated, then they could do what they want. They were not the creators of the DNA in the first place. And the most important aspect of all of this is the spiritual side. They cannot create spirits, which is who we are. The spirits are in control of the avatar, which is the physical part. So all they really did was replicate it. Just like I tell science, science has never invented anything that wasn't already invented by the creator. The Anunnaki did not create us out of something that was not already created by the creator. You can take a piece of this animal and a piece of this animal and combine them and create things. It's no big deal. But you could never have created the first thing. Not the principles that went into the structure of the building blocks. Well, we're going down to the chromosomes and all that make up the human body. We cannot even fit the amount of information that a human cell is made of into a computer yet. The cell is so complicated. So they didn't create cells. They just replicated cells. They really didn't create beings. They replicated beings in a manipulative fashion. Those are your Elohims of the book of Genesis. And here is their arrival.
Chapter 17. They're here. It was high noon when the first drones appeared out of the western sky, as species of the planet looked up to see flying machines circling in their patterns, imprinting their gear onto landscapes in several areas upon Earth. Some designs were discernible, while others were much more obscure and mystifying. Thousands of years later, anthropological decoded messaging revealed the ornamentations to be markers for celestial reasons and observations. Some of these circles could only be understood from very high positions in space, and inauspicious, threatening devices hovered quietly, suspended with a low-sounding hum. The crafts appear to be unmanned monitoring devices, awaiting instruction from a remote source. They seem to have purpose, but were without life, or life as we know it. All night the machines sat motionless as they seemed to be awaiting instructions from the controller. Gradually, there in a midday sky, under a wilting sun, the machine's circumference began to shimmer as lights blue and green gyrated beneath the hull of the craft. All at once, rings of light seemed to heat the structure until it became a brighter red, then amber, then a yellow glow began to form patterns. As inexplicable conformity began to reconfigure the contiguous ornamental enchantment of its perimeter. Later, it was found that some of these machines carved tall monuments on a small island in the middle of a near ocean, in linear alignment, perhaps to model their creator. What a unique form of first contact this was, as an introduction and an example of the being's technical engineering, as well as their taste in design architecture, and the abilities of their seemingly advanced mechanized culture. Stacked stones made walls from thousands of rocks. Molded were the seams that seemed to interlock. As the time for the main arrivals drew near, a breeze and then a shock wave, and then a cloud began to pierce through the air, and then an aperture began to appear. As it came closer, it began to grow bigger and bigger still. Through the cloud burst grew an opening until lightning and thunder proceeded a glow of golden and amber brilliance. This event repeated itself 2 times, then 3, then as many times as there were vessels to appear through them. A great ball of fire burst out from the events, uncloaking ships from visible space. Down from the clouds merged they them out of the corridors. In Vessel 1, Enlill, god of air, son of the sky god Anu, he would come to be known as Yahweh, and will cause a flood. Then appeared the vessel of Anki, minister of science and son of Anu, He would come to create man in their own image. Image of the Elohims they were. Then out of the clouds came the greatest of all celestial boats. It seemed to be surrounded by many silent but powerful engines that kept balance and made pure its exquisite flight. Later, it would be titled the Phoenix as it rose for an eternity. This one belonged to Enlill himself, who would come to be known as Jehovah. Accompanied by his daughter Inanna, who would come to be known as the Womb Goddess, and her sister Nana, whose spirit would be used to create the spirit of Asu Adam. At the time, it was completely unknown that the first visitors to the planet would become the biblical Elohims of the book of Genesis 1, chapter 1. All three very large faces could be seen through the transparent alloy that shielded them from the bulkheads to the nose of the vessels. They, in all their glory, could only be described as idiosyncratic in their peculiarity. Their ships, too, were designed to make a remarkable statement of glory, splendor, and shock. Placed they down as landing gear began to protrude from the sides of the vessel, compensate for much-needed moisture and condensation. The air was quite rich compared to the air on Nibiru, whose atmosphere had been damaged for thousands of years and in much need of restoration. Sent in from atmosphere, chemicals to enhance the chemistry, making the transition possible after studying the planet's atmosphere for the past 2 years. Amazingly, the air on Earth was better for the new arrivals than the air where they were from. Blood, too, had been stored for doping for such purpose to enhance their ability to breathe the new air. In time, their ships would open, and slowly they would emerge onto their feet. They then stretched, taking deep breaths, making the transition accelerate. The Anunnaki, whose name derived from An, the Sumerian god of the sky, and the earth goddess, Ki, who, when erect, were about 7 feet tall, as they stood in grandeur, looking from side to side. Their hair was long and red, their eyes was of almond-shaped and of bright blue glowing pigment. Pale gray were their complexions, great were the lower jaw lines, with cheekbones high and protruding lips. Their hair was beaded like stalks of corn down their face and braided beards. The Anunnaki also possessed very long fingers and an elongated cranium. Surely they had to be of the same direct lineage as the future humans, Akhenaten and Nefertiti. It was truly in their image that mankind was created. Wild animals laid in wait in shallow brush, as triggers did cause them to salivate, and they need to lurch out to sample and savor the never-before-seen tasty and extraordinary beings. Little did they know that the feelings were indeed mutual. Equally aroused were the flying insects that hovered above, causing the Anunnaki to consider yielding considerable inordinate weapons against them. As tradition, one of the first things that an arrival must do is to prepare fresh meat of the land to show respect of its importance. It was also important to have a proper venue that they may have proper ventilation. Much smoke would result in the recipe's preparation. They then brought charred wood to lay underneath the iron racks that the animal flesh would lay upon. They would then take memorial portions from grain offerings and burn it on the altar as an offering, an aroma pleasing to the Lord. To the Lord. Leviticus chapters 2 and 3.
I hope you enjoyed that. Now that they are here, this story becomes very, very interesting because we still haven't picked up where the Bible picks up. The Bible doesn't know anything about this. Mankind has not been created. That's why you have a simple Adam and Eve story in the Garden of Eden. Mankind was not here at this particular point. What they did was they've taken the stories in the Sumerian tablets that was left by the Anunnaki and created an Adam and Eve scenario. The one that they created is ludicrous. It's one that basically says that I think we're going to wait on that until we get to the creation of mankind. Then I can get into it deeper. Let it suffice to say that we are at the point where the principles are being laid out. The terraforming of the planet, the creation, and one of my favorite parts, the location of the Garden of Eden. One of the speculations is that the original Garden of Eden was in a place called Teotihuacan. It's one of the oldest ruined structures that we have found today right in the region where the Anunnaki landed, in the region of Mesopotamia where the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers meet. This is the place where they created as their home base. Apparently they were from some pretty dry climate because they picked a pretty dry place. And once mankind was created and they got sick of mankind and they tried to flood them out, the recreation aspect of mankind is when the pyramids were actually built. But the pyramids were built by them, not by humans. What humans did was came and put the external layer on the pyramids to smooth it out so you couldn't see the blocks, and then put the limestone to polish the pyramids. But the pyramids themselves, once we get into that, like I said, we'll explain what their real purpose was, were energy devices. These beings came down here with everything they needed. What are you going to need if you have spaceships? You need to have the ability to replicate those ships. You have to have the ability to power those ships. Where are you going to get the power? You have to create the power, and you have to be advanced enough to create it out of the components that exist in the place where you are. And that was exactly what they were able to do. I know ancient Kemet likes to take credit for the creation of the pyramids. Well, if logically, if that were true, then did they also create the pyramids and what we now know as South America, for instance, where the Aztecs. Now the Aztecs were articulate enough to have a history where they passed down, and in their historical record, they said all along that, hey, those things were here when we got here. So by the time they matriculated and were old enough to be a civilization, they knew that we don't know how or who made them ourselves. But there's something dramatically in common to monolithic structures all over the world. The people in those regions where they exist cannot explain who built them or how they were built and why they were built. Why build? There are structures under the oceans with stair steps that would take somebody 50 feet tall to navigate, to negotiate up. Why would you build something where you had to ladder up and then travel through and ladder up? No. There were beings here that was just a regular step for them. When the Anunnaki came here, it almost seemed like they couldn't decide on what size they wanted the humans to be. So they made them in a variety of sizes. They made big ones for big jobs and little ones for little jobs. That's how sophisticated they were. In the Bible, it will tell you that there were giants here. Well, they were. They called them the Nephilim because they were the sons of the Anunnaki and the humans mixed. They were hybrids, and they were able to make them any size they wanted to. Big beings for big jobs, little beings for little jobs. So I hope you really have enjoyed this very important aspect of the story. Them landing, terraforming, and getting the land together to create this paradise, so to speak, is the most important part of this whole book. And we will be here for the next 70 chapters explaining this, and then we're going to get into how human beings now are to deal with the structures and powers that be to raise the level of spirituality of people. That is my goal. Help raise the spiritual level of people so we can all just get along. Get along in the way that we're supposed to get along and prosper. That's my goal here. If enough people work on this, we will at least be a planetary structure that is headed in the right direction. So I am your host, the writer, author of the book Ungodly Gods, metaphysician, hermeticist, and spiritualist. And you can call me Kurt. And I love everybody here. Please subscribe. This is a very important effort. By the time we get going here, we'll have other people involved to explain things even deeper than I'm explaining it. Thank you for watching. I love everybody. See you on the next episode.